So welcome back to the Redacted Culture Cast. We are jumping in for a second episode with Ian Strimbeck, and this one is intended to be a little bit more entertaining. If your feelings are going to get hurt, we apologize in advance, and if they're still going to remain hurt afterwards, that's on you. But today we're going to talk a little bit about physicality in the gun culture, because it's not only a sensitive topic, but there's room for improvement in how we think about it. And we may not be the godfather of the culture in this aspect, but we want to be able to jump into it in a way that's beneficial, as we've had conversations between each other about getting better at certain things. I think the gun culture oftentimes swings like a pendulum between negativity and like live, laugh, love entertainment when it comes to physicality. So, Ian, would you mind giving a brief summary of your background one more time?
Sure.
And then let's just jump into it.
Yeah. My name's Ian Strimbeck. I'm the owner and founder of a company called RuneNation. I spent some time in the Marine Corps from 2006 to 2010. Spent all that time in the infantry realm. I was stationed with 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Spent some time over in the Al Qaim region of Iraq from 07 to 08. And then all of 2009, I was all over the Mediterranean with the 26th MEU. When 2010 rolled around, they asked me to re-enlist. I said I'm all set with that, but I'll take that GI Bill money. So I went back home, which home at the time I was unfortunately born in the draconian and totalitarian state of Massachusetts, and they are not gun friendly there. But that was where I first started getting my interest within teaching in the context of firearms. So in the state of Massachusetts, you have to jump through a bunch of hoops and fire and give away your firstborn child in order to not only potentially carry your gun in open space concealed or public space concealed, but also to simply purchase them at a gun store. Now, you can't even look at guns without presenting your FID at the gun store. So I taught a basic firearms class through a company there, which got me reps teaching. It was very antiquated, very doctrinated. It was a state approved course. So you know how long that state approved stuff has to, how long it takes to get approved. So it was very outdated, but it got me reps. And then from there, I worked for an executive protection firm in the greater Boston area, working alongside international dignitaries, celebrities, VIPs, etc., that were visiting the Boston area. So that got me reps with understanding surveillance, counter surveillance, routes, and just your surroundings as a whole, especially when you're deemed in protection of a principal, or just a fancy protection term used for the individual that is paying that you protect them. And then, of course, from there, I also worked a very stereotypical door work at really horrible bars at really horrible times in really horrible areas of Boston, and that opened my eyes to the normalcy of everyday criminal interaction. And right before I started doing the door work, there is where I started getting my feet wet teaching within, not teaching, sorry, doing and doing consistently Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been doing it now for almost 11 years. I was just promoted to brown belt. For those who are not aware, in Jiu-Jitsu terminology or rank structure, brown is one right below black. And I've been doing it now, like I said, for almost 11 years. It's a huge part of my life outside of teaching people how to shoot guns. I also help teach at my jiu-jitsu school as well. And typically I teach between 40 to 42 seminars a year. Usually start in February, last one is in December, and it ranges from all topics such as basic, functional and carbine work to limited signature pistol and carbine work. So pistol from concealment or rifles staged in some type of bag or sling bag setup, how to properly store, deploy, get to work around barricades, etc. And then of course vehicle stuff, same thing. Pistol in around vehicles and rifle in around vehicles. Then of course my combatives stuff, which relates to the edge weapon entanglement problem.
You make me want to travel to the Northeast like nothing else. Between you and Frank and a couple of other people I know there, it's like I love the like that Atlantic seaboard feel, just almost like
Oh,
this.
dude, I couldn't live somewhere without green mountains. Like I know you got mountains down in certain parts of Arizona, especially you got to go farther north, but something about just the lush. I mean the winters are 100% the worst. I mean, they're probably not as the worst in Minnesota. I haven't been to Minnesota in the winter, but probably not as bad as that. But the summers definitely make it worth it. And even visiting up near Frank, that was an eye opener to me for the first time, because you hear New York, you obviously think the worst. You think Manhattan, you think Long Island, you think New York City. But that part of New York where he lives up near the Buffalo area, that's like a whole different That should be a whole different state, just like the certain parts of California that should not even be considered California. Like where I actually saw my first tractor pull competition with Frank when I
You're
was out there teaching.
and how old were you?
No, this was probably back in 2018, 2019. And yeah, my first tractor pull, and that was in upper state New York, people attaching like World War II jet engines to these tractors. Like it was the most insane shit I've ever seen.
Oh, the Midwest will break you. That's
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I can only
So yeah,
imagine.
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I grew up with tractor pulls and goofy stuff happening in the field and fun stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
wasn't a part of it. I was just a bystander. But
Oh
it's
yes, of
it's funny.
course, of
Oh,
course.
I saw my first tractor pull. Like I saw my first tractor pull when I was 11.
Yeah, no, I've heard of it, and then I saw it in real time. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no. You grew up in the Midwest and you're used to these big industrial engines just chugging away, pulling corn and wheat and growing everything for people to eat. And then you go overseas and you're like, oh, this has got a big engine in it, and I got to drive all the wheels. And you got guys
Yeah,
who've lived in cities who the biggest car they've seen is like a Ford F-150, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
this Striker isn't too bad. It sucks that I got to drive it with a PVS 14, but oh well, right? Team leader
yeah,
tells you what you got to do.
yeah,
Well, let's dive into the topic. The term of physicality, like physical fitness within gun culture, is easily a divisive subject, and I think that you and I have had a couple chats about it offline before we got onto this podcast. It's something that's always a relevant part of the gun industry because whether it's, you know, decaying physical standards within the military to the hyper exaggerated joke of like the overweight guy with a gun, and it's like, and it gets very divisive, derisive, insulting. It can even swing towards like like I said, the live, laugh, love era, where like we just want to encourage everyone to be in shape. It's
yeah,
like sometimes you got to get. Sometimes some people are very, very well motivated by the harsh reality of like, dude, I am winded in this environment,
yep,
and some people are not. And so there's that phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and I think it can come from a good heart, and I think it can come from a position of like almost supremacy, not supremacy, but like, yeah, let's go back to derision, where it's like if you're not in shape, you're gonna die. And I don't, and I've found like using the potentiality of death in an unknown future as motivation only gives you so much energy. And fitness is something that takes place over time. Like you can't. The worst thing about going to the gym is I can't just go shed 10 pounds tomorrow. If I work hard enough and I make money, I can go buy a excellent set of kit. I can go buy a dual tube pair of night vision, but I can't buy fitness. Um, and so it really is the long game, both for inside gun culture and capability, but then outside just being there for your family. And so I wanted to hear you talk about fitness because you have had some interaction with the guys over at. Well, I mean, there's some of the people that we know that are the same. Like, I've recently had Jack Donovan on the show. He's
yep,
doing he's a manosphere guy, if you want to call it that.
yeah,
You've got the guys over at Nonprofit, and their background, when you know about it, it kind of is impressive.
yes,
And then we've talked about things from the tactical games, and there have been so many different attempts at making a fitness part of gun culture almost artificially. I wanted to hear you kind of talk about it from your perspective of like you were talking about even awareness of your body. What you said, body awareness earlier,
yeah,
and
yeah. So, people are very easy to, or should I say, are very apt to believe or perceive that they have a really great understanding of their marksmanship and their skill development in it in a static context, because especially around the New England area, a lot of the ranges that people can become a part of, they're very uh, old school, I guess you'd call them. It's very, I guess boomer generationally. So
mm-hmm,
they're very much still into the trap and skeet, long range, bullseye style shooting. And because of that, their stipulations or their regulations at the range dictate that. So people that want to train realistically, realistically can't, unfortunately. And because of that, they're stuck with the fact of, well, this is how I usually train. And then when they come and see me, I'm like, well, guess what? We're not going to train just like that. And once we start just simply just moving, even if it's not just, even if it's not shooting while moving, if it's shooting, moving to point B, planting, and then shooting, just getting them used to the fact of moving from point A to point B safely with either the pistol out of the holster or the rifle in a safe muzzle direction, and being able to either remount that rifle or to represent the gun in a efficient and safe manner. It's very, we'll say, interesting to watch, because you are, from a teaching standpoint, again, somebody that has reps in watching people and seeing how people move and seeing how people learn. Uh, any person that has a half a chromosome would know the fact that I can tell when somebody is a physical individual in their life and when they're a very static or sedentary person in their life. And now they've also picked up guns and now they're figuring it out. Like I talked to you offline before we started this, I always say that it's a lot easier to get generally fit people into shooting than it is to get shooting purists into the idea of general fitness.
And this brings up the importance of culture and ideas and how we think about it. Now, as a philosopher, everything's a nail to me. Like, it's just going to be the way. But I think some of that can be laid at the feet of the prior generation. Let's just call it like the FUD generation, which is an overgeneralization. And we're not, not throwing spears at everybody above the age of 40. But there is that sedentary style of shooting that's very common in like the older way.
Yes.
And this generational shift that's gone on in gun culture can lay some of that responsibility at the feet of the prior generation. The prior generation of gun culture was very much so stand and shoot, learn how to shoot, learn how to hit your target. Whether it's like deer hunting from a stand. I mean, it's
Yes.
if you even think about like the Mississippi, everything east of the Mississippi tends to, especially the further north you go, let's just say north of the Mason-Dixon line and east of the Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken, most of the hunting there is all stand-based hunting. Whereas if you go out west, you got to climb the mountain, you got to chase the elk, you got to find the thing, you got to, there isn't a tree to put a stand in anyway, so you're stuck. But on the one hand, the styles of shooting that were less conducive to movement can be laid at the feet of the prior generation, or let's just say the FUD influence.
Yes.
However, even if that's the case, it's not an excuse to live that way.
Yes.
And now, as we are exploring into more physically demanding ways of shooting, whether it's CQB, urban recce, more athletically demanding competition style shooting, that itself, like that excuse is kind of not, I mean, it's not an excuse even, like that influence is diminishing. But on the
Yes.
other side, there is 100% your responsibility to yourself.
True. And even in just even removing shooting, like, personally for me, I don't I don't ever see a reason why any person, male or female, should ever not be generally fit. Like, I just don't see the positive ROI of being unfit and therefore unwell. And like, again, we're so easy to point and give excuses, and my life, I have these pre-existing injuries. Like, I get it. Everyone has a story. We all have different, we all have a story. We all came from somewhere. We all have a thing that not doesn't let us do the thing, whatever. I get that. But in general, like, if you're getting out of breath walking up a flight of stairs, especially as a parent, as someone that is in charge of another life in this existence, so someone that's in charge of another human life, that whether you like it or not, your child is going to look up to you as a, and you're going to mentor them. They're going to look up to you as a, hopefully, a positive role model in their life. And what kind of role model are you if you are not the um, astute example of physicality? And again, that's relative to the child, right? I'm not saying you need to go out there and be the next national CrossFit athlete. I understand how insane of a request that would be. But again, like if you're out of breath, if you blow out your back picking up your kid, um, all of these very simplistic things, and again, it's going to be subjected to your lifestyle, but if you can't do not even physical things, just like picking up your kid or doing manual labor in your backyard or whatever without hurting or injuring yourself, or being extremely winded to the point of you just get so aggravated that you just say screw it and you quit, like that's a sign that something, whatever that something is, needs to change. And yes, it is going to take work. I was listening to a podcast that our mutual friend, I guess you'd say, Michael Blevins from Nonprofit was on someone else's podcast, and someone had messaged Michael asking about like, how do I get the Superman body look, right? And for those who aren't in the know, the Nonprofit guys such as Michael Blevins and Mark Twite, they were the ones who did all the physical training for the actors and actresses in 300, 300 Rise of an Empire, Batman vs Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, all of your majority of those movies. So they are physical trainers in regards to fitness. And one of the guys asked, "How do you get the Superman body look?" 'Cause that's the most asked question, is like the Superman workout, to get that body. And the guy's 40 years old, hasn't been in a gym in 2 decades. And Michael on the podcast is just like, you missed the boat, dude. Like there's no, like, you can't get that body. I'm sorry, you completely missed it. You are 2 decades out of the gym. Time has passed already. It's just not going to happen. You can try, sure, but the reality is, like, sorry, dude, like you missed it. And that's not to say that people that are maybe listening to this podcast that are maybe 40, 50, maybe even 60, maybe got some boomers listening, I don't know. Maybe they do want to get back on the physical road, and that's fine, but you have to be okay with not being complacent, but again, going full circle to our previous conversation, to being content with what your body is going to allow you to do. Like, sorry, at 40, 50 years old, you haven't been in a gym in 2 decades and you want to be the next world ranking power lifter. It's not going to happen, dude. I'm sorry. Like you can try, but your body's probably going to break before that happens. So you have to be okay with wherever you're at in life, with your potential physical limitations, with your age, with the time you have available in your lifestyle. You have to be okay with being content with a certain subjective level of fitness for you. And that's, again, a very difficult line for people to follow, because they want to follow the guy who wrote the program, who did the thing, and get to whatever that unrealistic standard is. Uh, so that, I think, in itself is the larger issue, especially if we're talking about in the gun space. And we're going to talk about the gun space majority-wise. The majority-wise, and people in the gun space are males, and males really have this unconscious level of comparing ourselves to other men. That's what makes us more competitive, in my opinion. But because of that, it also is a con in the grand scheme of things if we're not, again, aware to that, and we end up getting drawn in and trying to compare ourselves to a body style or a program that we realistically can't do.
I thought it was interesting that you started with the idea of like body awareness, right? So
Yeah.
like body awareness in the sense of moving on a range and adding that to your skill set, your repertoire, or whatever it is.
Yep.
I remember, and even the way that you've been talking about it makes me recall back into when I was in Ranger Battalion, which is now over a decade ago.
Yeah.
And there was a time between my first and second deployment where there was I was put under what would officially be my second squad leader during my time, and I have the benefit of looking back, but even at that time, I was recognizing that like negative reinforcement for me at that time was not productive. And as a kid, I'm trying to communicate this to my squad leader of like, the team leader that I had at the time, we were not getting along very well, and it's like, you can't just keep telling me what I'm doing wrong, because I no longer know what's right, because all I know is that everything that I've done in the last 6 weeks is wrong, and whether it's because of this and that and the other, and like, don't get me wrong, there's a long story to unpack there with that time in battalion, because probably sending me to a language school instead of letting me go through my first training cycle wasn't the best choice. Was I in charge of that? No. Was the guy
Yeah.
in charge of it? Did he have a million responsibilities on his plate? Yes. But I remember this one time where we were like walking out in the parking lot, and I was talking to my squad leader at the time, and he was trying to, it was difficult. It was like, I wouldn't call it like an emotional, like sob story conversation, but he was like trying to figure out how to communicate to me, because some things were going really well and some things weren't. And one of the things that I was trying to communicate to him was like, I need you to tell me when I'm doing something right so I can remember that and I can do it again. And it worked for a while. I mean, there's a lot of other darkness that happened in that time, but one of the things that has really laid the groundwork for me within fitness is a very unexpected um, correlation, is that when I am doing well on deadlift, my footwork in the shoot house is better. When I am good at when I am at the gym, my I am more physically capable. Not because I need to do push-ups in a gunfight, not because I need to do chin-ups or pull-ups in the middle of every scenario that I'm in, but like the ability to have a disciplined strength in my body contributed to better control over fine motor skills in a high intensity environment. And you can talk about technique and footwork all day long, but going and learning how to do deadlifts made me a better CQB guy, because I was more confident and sturdy in my foot placement. It was the silliest thing, right? You think, oh, well, if you just do CQB all the time, you're just going to get better at CQB. It's like, well, no, you should probably mix in some deadlifts and get good at that, and get good at some squats, because you're going to be wearing weight and you want to be able to move around in your equipment. And all of these things contributed to, I got better. Both of those things, my deadlift and my CQB skill set, I rose together and fell together. When I skipped out on one, the other one would kind of diminish. But if I did both, they both rose. So like and the positive encouragement of this, and the positive encouragement in physicality, is it can be lacking in culture. I'm not saying it's universally lacking. I'm not saying that there's no good people out there. I'm not saying that there's no good instructors out there. I'm not saying there's no good call to fitness. Some people, that recognition that they are not in shape is what is the motivator for them to say, I never want to feel like that again.
Absolutely.
And so
Uh,
it's a good thing. Like, I'm entertained by it, because even where I'm at now, let's just say I've been complacent over the last 6 months. And I think I can say, as far as fitness goes, moved to a different state, got complacent with fitness. And why? I made excuses, whether it was money, time, launching a business, starting this podcast, or saying, you know what, I'm better than, I'm better at this, so I can cheat on that or whatever. Now a year later, I'm like, okay, I need to not be lazy anymore. And it's good. Like, it doesn't always have to be, if you can't deadlift 4 times your body weight, you're gonna die. Like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the fact that you're aware of it though is what makes the difference. Like there's again plenty of guys out there that will have all of that data, all of that raw data, all those excuses in front of their eyes, and they will still like not admit uh, fault to that. They will still point and blame because I think, and again, I can't obviously talk as being a female because I'm not a female, but I know that for being a guy, it's very difficult to be put in that position, admitting a that it's your fault, but also to accept that you are weaker than somebody else. Because I really feel like any man worth his salt doesn't like that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's not sometimes necessary to put things in better perspective, put things on a different lens. But because of that, I really do feel that it has become as a whole that we are a less physical culture than we were even I would say even 50 years ago. We've become more complacent with the fact that we live a more sedentary lifestyle. We have jobs that aren't as physical anymore because of the uptick in the evolution of technology, which you can look at that from two different lenses of it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, because obviously if not, we obviously wouldn't be having this conversation per se, if you want to use that example. But again, if not used for good, it can also have negative effects, and or if you are not aware of it, you can allow the staticness of it, the sedentary lifestyle of it, to draw you in and accept that, well, this is the type of life we live now, so I don't need to, lift anymore because I basically just stay in my house all day and order uh, you know Uber foods delivered to my house, so I really have no reason to, or not really even have a reason, have a drive or have a want to uh, become physical, which for me, I just can't comprehend that. But it's also because for me, I've always been physical even as a kid. Like my dad used to do professional to amateur cross country mountain bike racing. So I've been on a bicycle since I could literally walk, and used to go to all the local racing circuits, and that's how I used to spend my summer vacation, is following my dad, my mom, and me. We just follow them around and go to all the races, and that's just how I was brought up. I was a scout, I was a Boy Scout, I was an Eagle Scout. I went camping, I went hiking, I was on a bicycle, I was always outdoors. So to see other people that obviously haven't lived my life and haven't had the experience I had, I get that. But for them just to be okay with the fact of that they're weak and can be taken advantage of by another more physical person, and them being okay with that, is just it's very strange to me.
The Boy Scout reference was an interesting one because I too did the whole Eagle Scout thing,
Yeah,
and and I had to do like a proper, as if this was setting a pattern for the rest of my life. I was in a troop for a while,
yeah,
and didn't exactly get kicked out, but effectively did. Like
yeah.
effectively maneuvered myself into a position that there was no point to be there anymore. But then I
Okay.
left that troop and I joined another one.
Yeah.
And it was smooth sailing and great from there on out.
Awesome.
And one of the key differences between the two is that the first one had no ambition
Yeah.
in the youth. It was like parents dragging the soft body of their child
Yeah.
through an experience so that they could say that their kid was an Eagle Scout. And that was the first one. And then the second one was the kids were the leaders. They were motivated. We were doing 100-mile bike rides at 15 years old. We were doing,
Hell yeah.
like these kind of things, and it was, some of it was a maturity thing, but I think there's a void in our society for that kind of Boy Scout like mentality of not only public service, because there's a strong service aspect to like the history and the origin of Boy Scouts, but also that idea of like getting out and doing something. Going out, it's not just being uncomfortable. I don't like being miserable for the sake of being miserable. It's like camping. I hate camping. I hate camping. But I love camping when it's for something. Like if I'm on an overland trip on a motorcycle ride, camping's great.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something that even that climbing a mountain, trying to go on a hunt, these kind of things, then camping can be much more enjoyable. But just going out to go camp is not fun. Just to go
Yeah.
be
Just
uncomfortable.
just going out to pretend you're homeless.
And I thought it was cool. I thought, I'm inspired by it. Just listening to you, because you said this earlier about, I don't even remember what you said about, but I thought about it. Just I was on a motorcycle, an off-roadish kind of thing. I was on a spending time with a friend recently, and we did
Yeah.
this like we decided to do like an off-road trip, and we're riding dual sport motorcycles. We both got Tiger 800s. They're not exactly the smallest bike, they're not the biggest bike. And we are up in the Midwest, and instead of getting to ride on the fun of the gravel and the sand and the dirt and the mountains and the hills of the American Southwest, you had changes in elevation, but you had mud.
Oof.
And
Yeah.
I being, not on top of my game, my rear tire was balding already, and so I got myself in trouble.
God damn.
And it was just like it was not fun. And but there was this one part of the trail that we were on, which was it was a difficult part that involved going downhill for a very long time, and you're on this relatively thin track, not so thin that it felt immediately dangerous, but a relatively thin track with a sharp climb on the right, and like a sharp uphill on the right, and then like a drop off on the right, and an uphill on the left. And I'm in the front, and I am struggling to get down this hill, and I'm struggling because of various reasons, like, I didn't replace my rear tire before going out, and I was uncomfortable. And as even a friend, um, even as you're saying it, like, I realize I was such a bad example, even as a friend, not like, not like as a paragon, not as like a leader or anything, but just as a friend, because some of my physicality was coming into effect there, where given I hadn't, it's not, this is literally not a, well, it's, I'm making excuses for myself. And as a result, I'm struggling to go down this hill, and I am cursing, and I am throwing words, and I am fucking throwing a fit trying to get down this hill. And and some of that falls into the same line of like, it was not, I was not doing the right thing. And some of it was because maybe, my weightlifting was off, and some of it was my skill in riding was off, and whatever. You can say that this is the most trivial of examples, but even in presenting that up, I was going down this hill, not having a good time, cursing the whole way down, yelling at my bike, wanting to get out and put a round through the gas tank, just throwing a fit.
Yeah.
And and so even as a friend, I was doing a dishonor to my friend because I was not upholding the standard. And now that you bring it up in the realm of fitness, it's like maybe I now have something that I need to get better at.
Yeah, and I think we all do. Like, in general, as a whole, the danger is being okay with who you are. And I think Jordan Peterson had said something similar to this a while ago, where when people say, you're okay with who you are, and he's like, no, you're not. You could be so much better, and it's true. But I also feel like it can get dangerous, because then, but it also can only get dangerous if you have that very addictive personality, and that comes subjective to the individual. But um, I feel that if we're never satisfied in a safe way, like if we're like, yeah, my fitness is good, but let's see if I can get a second or 2 seconds off of my 10-minute airdyne time. Uh, that's the goal for next month or whatever. Like, again, setting acceptable goals, not being like, well, I failed that fitness standard. I'm useless. Or like then go the opposite manner, be like, oh, I failed this. Now I need to go do this extreme diet or do this extreme fitness programming to get to that standard. It's always little incremental steps. And again, I think that stems from a societal issue with us lacking patience, because we want the thing now. We don't want the thing now. We want it yesterday. Uh, when in reality, especially with fitness, it's a never-ending state of affairs that you're in with this idea of fitness. Like, if you want to talk about, like, as a whole, I've probably been focusing specifically on fitness. Like, yes, I've been fit my whole life as a kid, but actually, like, we'll say, being in a gym, I would say I probably never even stepped foot inside of a gym until I was in the military. I just never saw a reason to lift weights in high school or any of that. I did more body weight stuff when I was in high school, and I was, do more stuff outside. But I would say in the military. So that's 2006. So I would say from 2006 to now is when I really started to take my fitness more seriously, in a more presence and intentional sense. And even now, all these years later, I still feel like I know so little in the grand scheme of things. I'm always learning new things. I'm always willing to try certain programs. Like there was for a while where I got really, I drank the CrossFit Kool-Aid, I did the CrossFit thing, I did the weightlifting thing. I had a friend who was a, a USAW certified coach. So all I did was the clean and jerk, the snatch, front squat, back squat, clean pulls, snatch pulls. Did that for a year and a half to see how big I could get. I'm a smaller guy, and for me, in all honesty, at the point in time that was 2015, 2016, up until that point, I had never seen a 2 in front of my body weight ever in my life. And I know that for most people are listening, like must be nice. Well, it's actually not when you're intentionally trying to put on size. Like it was very difficult for me. Like it got to a point where I was just not looking forward to eating anymore. Like it was just a never ending, and it wasn't intentionally done. It's not like I was like, why am I so miserable? Like I knew why I was miserable because I'm intentionally trying to put on as much size and get to this goal. And I did. I got my heaviest was 208, 210, but then guess what? Everything started to hurt. And I was doing jujitsu at the time too, which is 100% counterintuitive, right? I'm trying to put on size and somehow still have good cardio and be flexible, which for the record doesn't go together. So my jujitsu completely plummeted. I had no cardio. I had probably one of the strongest grips. If I get a grip on you, forget it. But my gas tank was non-existent. My flexibility went down, but I could back squat, 415, 420, but no big deal. But my knees hurt all the time. Like if I were to squat down and get like a Tupperware container out of the cabinet, my wife would have to help me pull me back up because I like couldn't get out of like the squat hole I was in. But again, I did
Oh,
that.
you silly man.
Yeah, and again, I did that intentionally. And then after I like checked that box off, I'm like, okay, cool. And then I went the polar opposite way, and then started trying out the idea of intermittent fasting. So I'm always trying to try all these different things and seeing. For me, it's trying to see how adaptable the the body as a whole is. And for me right now, with where I'm at almost 36, which again for some listening that still may seem pretty young, but for me, I look at fitness now to assist my sustainability on the range when I'm teaching all day. For sometimes weeks, for like this past time, I taught for a week straight, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day on the range. So I look at my fitness to sustain and support that, and also more importantly, to support my jujitsu. So a lot of my, stuff now that I do in the gym, I use, for example, the space program by nonprofit. It's a $20 a month fee, and they give you like 7 workouts to choose from. And they're hard effort. It's not like you could, nor would I ever recommend you do all 7 of them, but they give like 7 that you can cherry pick from. And you can pick out what you want to work on. Like if you want to work more cardio heavy, if you want to work more strength heavy, if you want to work more endurance heavy, and all comes down to what you have in the gym. Like there's some workouts I can't do because I don't have the equipment. I'm not going to go out and buy like a free runner. I'm not going to go out and buy this other equipment. So like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that one, but I'll do this one. I have a sandbag. I'll try that one out. So I do more like free weight stuff now, picking up sandbags. Very rarely do I touch a barbell anymore. It's more like either on a rower or on the Airdyne, really pushing that endurance with the cardio, because that's basically what I'm doing every time that I go to jujitsu. It's seeing how flexible I am, but also to a point where I'm not overly flexible and there's no musculature to support it that I end up injuring myself. So it's a balance of being just flexible enough that I can keep myself safe, but also have enough cardio to get out of those positions where I may have unintentionally got my feet stacked because I'm rolling with a black belt or another brown belt or whatever else it may be. And also still having good grips, because grips is obviously how you're attaching to your opponent in jiu-jitsu. So looking at fitness, and also I also enjoy rock climbing, right? So I want to look at fitness to support rock climbing, to support every time that I demonstrate a drill, say on a handgun, and I'm wrenching on that grip, and I need to be able to support having myself have good recoil mitigation, being able to have a good fast draw. So that's how I personally look at fitness now. And again, that may look different for another listener that is maybe younger, that maybe does want to do powerlifting or Olympic lifting, or want to get more serious about CrossFit. Maybe they're going to work out more days a week than I have, and that's fine. But the overwhelming sense of the fact is to just be capable, to be an asset to yourself, to your family, to your community, and not be the guy that's a liability, to not be the guy that's out of breath and you end up trying to get your kids, say, out of an active shooter snare in a mall, and you just can't run because you're having like an asthma attack, or your lungs just can't support the elevated heart rate that you haven't been to since you've been a kid. So if I look at working out stemming from being capable for my kids specifically, and to be capable for my students that I'm trying to give a product to every time that I come out to the range. Like, I am very suspect of people that go out and teach as gun instructors, and they are anything but fit. And again, I'm not saying you need to have a chiseled chest and, do like a 400-pound squat. But if you're like hemming and hawing going from the loading bench up to the line, and you're like out of breath, you're profusely sweating, and like you don't fit in your shirt, like something needs to change, man. Like, you probably need a salad more than you need another rifle or another thing in night vision, and that's what I think it comes down to, is having that serious conversation with yourself. How that conversation looks, I don't know. I'm not you. I don't live your life, but that does need to happen, uh, because, as I talked about again before we started here, like, you're more apt to have heart disease than you are to get in a shooting at some point in your life. And obviously, if you're not taking care of yourself and your body, you're definitely going to you're going to end up with a higher percentage of that heart disease than anything else.
So the opposite side of the coin to gatekeeping is having standards. I
Mm-hmm.
think of it this way, right? Like, if you can't meet the standards, it's not gatekeeping. But if you meet the
Yep.
standards and then there's some artificial, arbitrary reason why you're not allowed in, then we might be able to call that gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And when I think about fitness, I'm maybe coming back to the gym, because I admit that I'm a seasonal guy. I have
Yep.
seasons where I'm in and I have seasons where I'm out, and I need to get better at being more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But and using that as an example, when I'm coming back to the fitness world, I usually look at a standard that I want to meet. One of the standards that's easiest for me to fall back on is the Ranger Battalion PT standards from 2010. You had to be able to do like as close to 100% as you could on push-ups, 100% as you could on sit-ups. And then there was a 5-mile run and pull-ups. So it's like, you have to be able to do 10 consecutive pull-ups. I can't even remember what the push-ups are, but it's something like trying to be able to at least do 72 or you want to aim for 72 in a 2-minute period. Sit-ups was like 78 in a 2-minute period. And this was the standard back then. Push-ups 72 in a 2-minute period. Sit-ups with no flopping, no crunches, whatever. 78 in a 2-minute period, a 5-mile run in under 40 minutes, and then 10 consecutive pull-ups. That's one standard for me that's easy to remember, and I know I've been able to do it in the past, so I know I can go back to it. The other standard is something like, I want to be able to bench press my body weight 10 times, deadlift twice my body weight, I don't remember, 5 or 10 times, and it's kind of like the 1-2-2 standard.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't remember exactly what it is, and I usually look it up and I go back into it. And so, like, these are different standards. Or another one that's even a simple standard is I want to be able to do a handstand push-up without a wall. Like, that's a discipline and
Yeah.
strength one. And I have never been able to do a handstand push-up without a wall. And it's
Same.
now some of it, like, that's a little bit more esoteric. And
Yeah.
so, and there's different, and one of the things that standards can be encouraging on, even going back to my Ranger Battalion story, is that even back then, I was trying to figure out ways to communicate and how to understand where that physicality is when I'm doing it right and when I'm doing it well, and essentially positive reinforcement. And then the term and the idea of having standards even for gun culture is like, if you're going to take someone like me, right? I think a lot of gun culture fits within our category. I think I do. I know there are going to be, there's a bell curve, and America as a whole is generally out of shape, and we can deride them until the cows come home. they'll probably just turn into a cow and not come home. But the point is, if you're going to set a standard that, like a Venn diagram, incorporated all these different aspects from your jujitsu side to your shooting side to your general fitness side, what do you think? Could you come up with like a general standard that you'd think people could aim for right now? That's not. This isn't. This isn't. You're at the top of your game. This isn't. You're the best in the guy. But it's like, what is a good standard to achieve? And then from there, move on to pick another one and move. And because what that which is measured is managed.
Yeah, like I would say for like the very nuanced novice, like a person who hasn't, like I said, been back in the gym since high school and is very out of shape, I would very much rather, and again, I'm going to preface that this whole forward conversation we're going to have, I'm not a fitness trainer. I have no fitness credentials. I just know that I have been in fitness as a whole since, well, my whole life, but like I said, more intentionally in a gym setting since 2006. So take that for what it's worth.
Yep.
Because I do feel like, again, and you can talk to, like I said, any of the nonprofit guys about it. Like this is where, just like in the gun space, the accreditation stuff gets really overzealous. And obviously, you should have some understanding of, uh, the basic fundamentals, how to teach somebody in a gym. I understand that. For me, I'm not there yet. I have no interest in writing programming for people. I've had people ask me in the past. All I know is what personally works for me.
I'll
But
I'll I'll add some context then. Like
yeah,
if I know that there's I'm gonna add context because it might help clarify the question.
yeah,
So like I'm not a jujitsu guy right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So if you were to say like what is if you were to look at me as a peer,
yeah,
as a peer in whether you're owning up in the you're stacking up on a door, or we're going to be at a range. Like if you were looking for somebody that you maybe were teaching in concert with somebody, or somebody that you want to do, like, let's just talk about it as a peer, not as an aspiration, but as a peer. What, like, if you were going to treat me as one, what would you expect as a standard from me?
Well, I would definitely focus on, if we're talking about jujitsu, I would focus more heavily in the beginning, again, as a very nuanced novice, on just body weight stuff. Because I feel like people that just get back into fitness immediately want to go to the heavy barbell or the heavy free weights, and their body just is not ready for that at all. If anything, you're going to put your body into more of a shock, and you're going to get injured, and then you're not going to be able to go back to gym, and you say the gym isn't for me, blah blah blah. So I'd focus on more, focusing on the calisthenics, the core, basics like pull-ups, push-ups, air squats, stuff like that. Like if you're out of form, like you'd be surprised the amount of people who can't even do an air squat without like having the, like, I call it like the the dog shitting back, like that when a dog goes out in the lawn to do his business, their back's all curved, they have like no,
I just
they have like
I was
they,
just I was just at a friend's house and we were sitting on their deck and their dog had to take a dookie, and it was just like, that's the funniest shape I've seen in a while.
yeah, that, I mean, that's how you see some people do an air squat. God forbid they pick up a bar to do a deadlift. It's even worse. Now they're gonna like blow out their spine. So just focusing on that structure, that body awareness, to know what it feels like to have a spine that is in a correct position and is active versus being hunched forward and not being active. And the problem is doing that by yourself with no formal instruction. It's the same thing about if you dry fire but have never been to a formal seminar or class, you really don't know if you're doing it right or wrong. You could be ingraining bad habits. So like if for whatever reason you can't get coached, or you don't have the money or whatever, I would say, just like with dry fire, record yourself, right? Record yourself doing that air squat or that push up and seeing how Like, are you actually bowing out your back? Are you actually getting contact with the floor? Are you actually engaging your lats and your scapula on the pull-up, or is your shoulders just floating out of the socket? Like that's all stuff that, again, if you know what to look for in the video, you can potentially pick that up. But I would say if you're focusing on doing fitnessy related stuff to help beginning or help with the beginning stages of your jujitsu, I would focus more on mobility. I would focus more on body weight stuff. So mobility meaning like doing the hip escape movement. People call it shrimping in jujitsu. Basically, you're laying on the floor with your back to the floor, your heels as close to your butt as you can, and you're basically bridging, and then you're scooting your hips out in a certain direction, then you're recentering and then doing the other direction. So the hip escape in jiu-jitsu is the fundamental technique of everything in jiu-jitsu. It's how you create space, it's how you remove space, it's how you basically move on the ground. Because we're talking about jiu-jitsu, where most fights go to the ground, that's where it's going to be. So if you are on bottom in a very not so great position, you have to know how to move your hips in a certain manner to either create space or to close up space or to just maneuver to get out of there. So knowing how to move your hips around, having that good core strength, having the ability to be able to roll over your shoulder safely while protecting your neck so you don't end up rolling over your head and you end up putting your neck in a bad position. That will definitely help out your day one of jujitsu. But people always ask, like, um, how do I prepare to go to my first jiu-jitsu class? And as cliche and as stupid as it sounds, it's just show up, you know? Like I have a good friend at jiu-jitsu now. His name's Mike. He just got promoted to his blue belt, which is one above white. So that's kind of, like I said, that's like the big step. Like, you made it out of your white belt stage. You're still kind of figuring stuff out, but you have a fundamental base now, and he's lost over 100 pounds. I mean, he's still a bigger guy, but he lost a lot of weight and wanted to do jujitsu to lose that weight. And he did, and he still is. And he didn't really come with a plan. He didn't show up with or didn't ask for some type of fitness program. He just showed up and just did the work. And yes, if you are overweight and you are out of shape, or both, because they're both, it it is going to be tough. You are going to struggle, but that's okay. That's why you go and you start jujitsu, is because you have to be, in my opinion, a little off, not for just jujitsu, just really any modern martial art. You have to be okay with suffering. You have to be okay with being comfortable in the uncomfortable, as my good friend Paul Sharp has said. And that's really the truth of it. And the problem is people don't want to do that. And of all the people that I've come in contact with over the years, all of the anxiety ridden, depressed individuals that are out there, they are usually the same people that avoid the hard things. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist by any means, but my perception of things is the reason they have those high levels of depression and anxiety is because they've never hit rock bottom. They've never truly felt what hitting that hard rock bottom feels like. And because they're in this weird middle limbo state of having no defining gauge, so to speak, that they think everything is hard and they think everything is scary. And they're in this perpetual state of just anxiety because they have no sense of how capable they can truly be. And that's why I think doing any type of uh, physical skill, like let's say like you have no interest in jujitsu or grappling or martial art, cool, whatever, and you're just a gym guy, cool. That is still better than being the person on the couch that is afraid to take that step into the gym or into the mats. And that's what I think makes the defining difference in those individuals that take that first step is that they're so afraid of what people may think of them, or they're doing it the wrong way, or yeah, they're, or I mean, I'm really struggling with this. And you're like, yeah, you are going to struggle with it for a bit. But again, that's okay because you're still here. And that is the marked difference between the person that says they're going to do it tomorrow versus the person that actually stepped in that door and did it today.
I have intellectually struggled with the idea that Marcus Aurelius said, which was the obstacle is the way.
Yep.
I have over intellectualized that idea until it became nothing, and I had to pull it out of the abyss and bring it back to meaning something. And sometimes it's literally like, stop thinking about it, go do it.
Yes.
Stop trying to come up with it. Stop thinking about it. Stop meditating on it. Stop pondering all the components of it, and go do something about it. And that something is oftentimes something like that, where that obstacle is. What is it that you're avoiding? Why are you, stop telling me why you're avoiding it, unless that why is going to be a direct line to what you know you should be doing and you know you're avoiding. The whole story of Jonah from the Old Testament is a characteristic of this principle. Jonah was told by God to go to Nineveh. He said he didn't want to, so he went the opposite direction. It caused other people suffering, potentially death. Said, "Okay, fine. It's me. I'm the problem." And then he was, swallowed by the whale, and then spat out on the lake. And then when Nineveh repented and did what God wanted them to do, Jonah was unhappy because he was like, "I wanted vengeance. I wanted to see them smited for their sins and stuff." And it's just this interesting. I think the story of Jonah can be a little bit more expansive than
Yeah. Yeah.
what Marcus Aurelius was talking about. But the challenge that it was is that it's just like the challenge is, even for myself, don't over intellectualize it. Sometimes it's just okay. You know what? I might not. I'm just gonna go do it for 30 minutes. I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
And this is really going to be for, again, those that are maybe listening right now that are really struggling with that. And again, maybe they did fall off the bandwagon. It's been a couple of years. Again, you don't need to go in and kill yourself on like a 5-3-1 style programming and be, deadlifting 500 pounds. Like if your body isn't there yet, you need to be okay with that, not forever, just for the temporary. And maybe it's you just going on a 2-mile walk, not even a run, just getting your body up and moving, getting it out of the house, fresh air, sunlight, just going for a walks, getting your brain stimulated outside of your closed environment, and just getting that heart rate just a little bit up. Then maybe going a 3-mile, then a 4-mile, then a 5. Okay, maybe 5 is like, okay, you're kind of feeling it. Maybe now you turn that 1 mile or that 2 mile walk into a slight jog, and then you just slowly progress them there. But again, it all stems from the idea is you have to be okay with doing this for the long haul. And you have to be okay with being patient with yourself, patient with your body, patient with the current situation that you may be in, whether financially, like again, maybe you haven't been back in the gym because of financial reasons. I get it. Gym memberships are expensive. Buying your own gym equipment is just as expensive, sometimes if not more expensive. Maybe your work situation, the timing just isn't good to go to the gym. I understand that. So be patient with that. And even if that means that you need to do it when you get home from work and just do the body weight stuff we just previously talked about, or just going on your walk for right now for the temporary, be okay with that. Again, not forever, just for the temporary. Obviously, strive for better little by little. But even if you make 1% gains every day, that's over 350% increase in a year. But again, you have to be okay with that patience. And a lot of people aren't. A lot of people want that. And again, you see it all the time in the fitness world. The program to fix everything, the supplement that will make you lose 20 pounds or whatever, right? When in reality, it's you have to be okay with sustainably procuring better fitness for your body on a habitual basis. Now, I don't say daily because I understand that, for some people asking them to go to the gym every day, even for me, that's a hard ask. We all need rest days. Like, no matter what David Goggins or Jocko says, okay, like, yeah, we all need rest days. So I'm not going to say daily, but if you can make it on a somewhat habitual basis, and again, that's subjective to you and your lifestyle, you're still better than the guy who's sitting on the couch thinking about it.
Yeah, there was like a Japanese term referring to like that one. I think it's called kaizen.
Yep.
It's like getting 1% better every day, and it's a compounding interest. So in a year, you're making more than 365%, and I can't remember
Yeah.
what it is. It's something like 1,000.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is true, and I sometimes I'm afraid when it comes to fitness that we focus too much on the extremes.
Yeah.
And it's
For
like,
sure.
and it's okay to have goals, but no, it's not okay to have goals. It's important to have goals, and that's why
Yes.
I was asking about that standard from earlier. Is like, what is it? What is a standard that you think a person should be at? What is the standard that you hold yourself to?
Phew. Well, I would say if you can do, uh, if we're talking about just body weight or cardio stuff, I would say 10 unassisted 2 chest level pull-ups, unbroken, 50 push-ups, 100 true air squats, breaking parallel. Doesn't have to be ass to grass. We're not like doing like crazy yogic level squats here, but obviously no like eighth squats I call them. The guys in the gym that put like 350 on, they like just barely, just barely break an eighth degree, And a really good standard that I got from the nonprofit guys is the 300 FY, which is a workout they use for the 300 crews. It's basically if you have access to an Airdyne, also known as a devil's tricycle. It's probably one of the worst cardio machines outside of the ski erg I can imagine. I was a rower guy, still have a rower, but I just because of how much I use my grips now with shooting and jujitsu, like the rower just smokes my hands like to a point of anguish. So I do more of my cardio stuff on the Airdyne. But if you can accumulate your body weight and calories in 10 minutes or less on the Airdyne, that is a really, really difficult and hard standard for and then that's more specifically targeting the cardio portion of things. How well you're able to exchange oxygen in your lungs specifically, and seeing how, and it's definitely more mental too than anything else, because you're like, oh, 10 minutes, no big deal. But when you're grinding for 10 minutes straight on that machine, there's especially like minute 7, minute 8, you're just like, fuck this, I quit. Like this is stupid. I'm never gonna get there. So you're definitely having this internal mental battle with just a very simple uh, workout request. Just pedal as hard as you can for 10 minutes. That's it. But in
Good.
reality, like it's it's a lot harder than it seems. But that's a really really simple but difficult standard.
So 10 uninterrupted pull-ups, proper.
Yep. Yep.
50 uninterrupted push-ups,
Yep.
100 uninterrupted squats,
Yep.
breaking the 90,
Yep.
and then be able to burn your body weight and calories numerically in a 10-minute section on an Airdyne.
You got it.
Okay, so that's one of the standards that you hold yourself to.
Yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's funny because when you talk about standards, it's always like, well, I don't want anyone to find out that I slipped up the other day. But I mean, it's just what we deal with. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
this, it goes back to your cold start and shooting.
Yep.
It goes back to like the having integrity. And one of the things that gets overlooked, and this goes back to Ranger Battalion, is that like on the one hand, having a standard for fitness in battalion has to do with the job, right? You have to have a certain amount of physicality to do the job. Otherwise, you are a moral burden on your comrades. I know it's
Yep.
funny that we still call each other comrades, even though we're not communists. But like, there is this story, or this very real, there's this reality that like, if you're in the bad situation and you're the guy that's holding up the team because you are not in shape, the chains that bind you to them are not physical chains, but that you're holding their integrity hostage because they have to pull you up. And brothers will do, will sacrifice life and limb for brothers. And
Yeah.
so there's that side of it. But when it comes to like physicality in battalion, the other one is a question of, do you have the integrity to maintain yourself when no one's looking?
Yeah.
When do you have the integrity to, when you're a private, you have one thing to meet the standard and then exceed it. But then as even a team leader, we see this all the time. We saw this every once in a while. I mean, when I say all the time, I mean there were overt cases where like Ranger Battalion had a caste system. You were no tab or you had a tab. If you had a tab, you were in the upper caste. And then there were like microcosms above that. But there was you had a tab or you didn't have a tab. And if you didn't have a tab, you were in the lower caste. You had you had a different set of rules. You had to speak a certain way, stand a certain way. You had to do certain things. But once you got to Ranger School as a private, you get your tab. It sort of was a it sometimes functioned very well as a rite of passage and sometimes very poorly. But some people, and usually you would know them as a private, would get they would work hard, they'd smoke themselves, they would get physically fit, they would impress the wrong guy, they would go to Ranger School, they would get their tab, they'd get out of Ranger School, and they would get complacent. And they would just, veg out and become, it's not that they had to, meet their peak physicality at 19 standard, but it's just you knew who you were talking about because you're like, that guy, no one would say it as
Yeah.
much, but you knew the guy who like let himself go after he got
Yeah.
his tab. And that was not a physical problem, it was a character reference problem.
Yeah.
And so like I even remember after I got my tab, I was good for a while and then I let myself go for a while. And it was like when I saw, as a team leader, I had to look into my eyes of my private and be like, I am not meeting the standard. There was a sense of shame. Like I was meeting the standard, but I was meeting the numerical standard, but I wasn't meeting the unwritten standard.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I had to start making excuses, and it was not a good thing.
Yep.
So it has a lot to do with character. It has a lot to do with integrity. Just like shooting, being an instructor has to do with integrity. If you lack integrity, it'll show on the range. And when we look for instructors and we look for people to do well in this industry, we are looking for integrity. It's funny that we spend so much time attacking, like not we, but gun culture spends so much time eating its own, and it usually does so on like integrity basis. Like
Yeah.
sometimes people will casually say, "Oh, he doesn't know how to shoot," and it's like, I don't know what to do with that, man. I really don't. Because what bothers me is like he doesn't have integrity. That's what we're looking for. We're measuring up, we're trying to measure each other in a way where like it's not overtly oppressive, not even oppressive isn't the right word, but it has value. It has like meaning between us. And if a person is lacking in integrity, that reputation is a dark stain and it's hard to get rid of.
Absolutely. And the unfortunate thing is that sometimes uh, the the growth of technology within social media allows people that lack that integrity, they're able to, we'll say, cloak it uh, a lot easier than, say, in prior years. And it's really hard to discern as a novice in this space, as somebody who maybe just got into shooting, just bought their first gun, wants to know where to go, um, wants to know where to learn from. There's just so much information out there, so many, you know, teachers and instructors, and the industry is just, in my opinion, oversaturated with it. Not in a negative manner. Not saying like oversaturated is a bad thing. So we got a lot of people teaching good things in the private sector now, which is great. I was listening to a podcast with a gentleman named Kyle DeFore. He owns a company called DeFore Performance Shooting. Definitely one of the instructors I want to get into a class with ASAP. He puts out good knowledge, has been in the industry for as long as I could remember, and has a lot of reps lot of reps with teaching. And he said that the industry we have now currently, and this is his words, his opinion of things, that this is the best it's going to get just because of uh, the lessons learned we've had over the past 20 something years of conflict overseas. He very rarely doubts that we're going to get to this point again, um, unless we have another, obviously another 20-year conflict. But the experience that these people, these individuals that are coming back with, either leaving the service or being retired, now starting their own companies, uh, they're we're all eventually going to, get old and die, and those lessons learned are going to disappear. In the next generation that comes, it's going to be very hard to say what they may offer outside of just theory or stuff that has been previously taught by other people other than direct experience. And the same thing can even be applied with, fitness. Not to say that, fitness can't get any better. I'm sure that it can, but just the information that's available, science wise, equipment wise, there really is, again, no rhyme or reason for an individual not to be generally fit than to just accept the situation that they're in. Like again, I can't reiterate the fact enough that there is no positive ROI for being unfit. There is plenty of positive ROI for being in some general level of fitness. And again, what general level of fitness means to you, again, that's subjective to you, your lifestyle, your pre-existing injuries that you may or may not have. But there is literally nothing positive about being unfit, especially again if you are a parent, or even if you're just a couple with a significant other. There is nothing positive about being unfit, and you're in a self-rescue scenario with your significant other, and you can't do anything because you're having a heart attack or you're out of breath and you can't do what needs to be done. I quite honestly wouldn't be able to live with myself if I was in that situation. That is probably one of my, for being completely transparent here, that is probably one of my biggest nightmares, quite literally, is to be in a situation with my family and being unable to protect them, whether that be through physicality, whether it be through the use of a self-defense tool, to be in a situation where you are helpless. I don't think there's anything worse than that.
Yeah, if you're going to talk about nightmares, one reoccurring nightmare would be having it's literally a dream. Like I'm asleep, I'm
Yeah,
having a nightmare. One of
yeah,
them would be like, you're in a scenario, you're in a situation where something happens, the apocalypse, the world starts falling apart, zombies, whatever, and it's like,
yeah.
and you have a gun, but you have the wrong ammunition. Like that's,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
uh, that's
um,
definitely another good one.
I remember like my father's had that one, has that's a reoccurring dream that my father has had. I've had versions of it.
Yeah,
The funniest thing about it is like my military nightmare that comes up oftentimes, it's oftentimes very melancholy, is I have to pack my rucksack, but I can't find my stuff. Like I'm it's like it's the dumbest thing, but like
yeah,
I know I'm have I don't I very rarely, if ever, I think it's only ever happened like twice in my life where I figured out that I was dreaming. But
yeah,
like the one of the reoccurring nightmares that I have from being in the military is like I'm trying to pack my rucksack and I just can't do it in time. And like you've got that combined with like the sleepy sluggishness, and it's I usually can't find my stuff,
yeah,
or it's like, oh man, we gotta go, we're gonna go do the mission, and it's not like a high pressure situation where like the world is ending. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get to go on the cool raid, it's gonna be awesome, I finally get to like live this dream
yeah,
in the dream, and it's like, oh, I got to grab my stuff, and I go to like grab my rucksack, and it's just spilled all over the place, and I'm like panicking because I can't find my plate carrier and I can't find my
yeah,
rifle, and it's like that is my reoccurring nightmare when it comes to like military stuff, is I've got to pack my ruck and I can't do it, and
yeah.
it's like, so yeah, I mean, it's funny how we have different ones. We
Yeah, I
want
mean, but that skill, but it's again still from a macro standpoint, that still stems from you being unable to be an asset,
Yeah.
just in a different context.
Yeah, no one wants to be that person.
Nope.
And so there's that. So, well, let's this second episode with you. I mean, this is what technically your third time, because we have one that went out just
Yep.
before, and then we had the last time you were on. What is something regarding fitness that you would want to
Yep.
leave with for advice?
Don't believe the false truth that you aren't capable. We're all capable. We just have different paths to get to that end state of whatever your realm of physicality looks like. So don't get discouraged by the fact of, I'm overweight, or I haven't been back in the gym in, 20 years, or I have a bad hip, or I have a shoulder rebuilt, or whatever. Again, we all have our own story. I get that. I really do. But at the end of the day, life doesn't care. Life will still go on. And the last thing that you want to be, like I said, is that liability. So figure out a way to get fitness into your life, even if it's 1% at a time, even if it's a tiny sliver after another tiny sliver. It's that slow progress that is still going to be better than, again, just sitting on your couch thinking about, oh, I'm going to do that tomorrow. And you are more than likely going to be discouraged at first, and your body is going to hurt, especially, again, if you've allowed yourself to get to an unhealthy weight, or you've allowed your body to get quite literally too soft, that your musculature can't support you. So now that when you do these exercises that aren't really anything too much of an ask, like, I'm not saying you should go into a gym and do a 200-pound clean and jerk after not being in the gym for 20 years, right? But if you're doing these very simplistic body weight exercises, and the next day, like, your body feels like it ran over by a train, that's normal. Again, especially if you haven't done this in a long time, your body is reacting in a normal manner. So don't get discouraged by the fact that you are going to feel pain and you're going to be sore in the beginning. And obviously, take appropriate levels of time off. I'm not saying to, again, full on David Goggins it and just grind and hustle and destroy your body in a way, because, as Jocko would say, good, the pain is good. The pain is there to let you know that you're alive, but it also is an indicator to know when you are in an unsafe position or an unsafe environment. So don't ignore it to an unsafe level, but also be aware that, like, again, you are going to feel pain in the beginning of this, but just know that it is going to be okay. You are going to make it out the other end, and there's plenty of other people who have been in your situation.
Got it. Yeah, well, that makes sense, and it's helpful. So thank you very much. One of these days, we're gonna have to do the opposite version of like fitness advice for the fitness guy. Like, I got you, dude. I know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in great shape here, but you can't read good.
Yeah, idiot. You
Idiot.
you don't know who Emerson is, moron.
Which Emerson? Ralph Waldo Emerson?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Self-reliance. That was him,
Yep.
right? Or was that
Yep.
Thoreau? Oh, well. Yeah, what is it? How to determine Faulkner from somebody else? Whatever. Faulkner from Thoreau.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the artistic elite, the autistic elitism of the writing peoples. So,
Yeah.
well, Ian, thank you very much for coming back on. I've
Yeah, thanks for
enjoyed.
having me, man.
I wanted to have a lighter-hearted conversation with you about fitness, because it can be so, like, not even oppressive, but like, well, maybe that's the best word. Just so, like, kind of half-hearted, and listening to you have a conversation about it in regards to jujitsu, shooting, fitness, health, entertainment, lifestyle. I think even I'm getting something out of it. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Where do people find you? How do they follow you? Where do they get into your classes? Jump on your merch train? Choo choo choo.
Sure. Yeah, so I got my website, RuneNation, LLC.com. And on there, for all my current seminars for 2023, I got some up there for 2024. It's underneath the seminar page. Additionally to that, in regards to merch, I got shirts, hats, sweatshirts. I also work with a coffee company called Invicta Coffee. I have my own, if you're a coffee snob like I am, uh, it's very, as I jokingly say, small batch artisanal craft coffee. I have my own line to them called Rune Brew. If you like lighter roasts, Brazilian roasts, that they sell on there. They also make a bunch of other stuff, dark roast, medium roast, all that. I work with a homemade, I guess you'd call it male, well, not even male, just I guess should say grooming company. They make a lot of stuff for beard oils, hair stuff, body soap, candles, things of that nature. It's veteran owned. The company is called Locks Hair Company. They're out of Pennsylvania. Dave, the owner, is great people. He supported me since day one. I have my own beard oil and pomade through them if you like that. But like I said, they also make shave soap. They got body soap. They got beard soap. They got candles. They make everything in house. Super good people. Additionally, with that, all the sponsors I work with on my site too, such as Vertex, Ripcord Rifles, um, Leopold Optics, things of that nature. Everything else, everybody I support teaching wise, they're on my website as well underneath the clan page. And because of the way that social media is, I like to speak my mind, just like Forrest does. And because of that, it's put me in precarious positions in the past 3 years, to a point where I've had my account threatened to be taken down multiple times, basically been told that because of where my status of my account is at, that it can't be shared or whatnot. So because of that, I've put most of my content creation, so to speak, through a $3 paywall on my website called Mindfuel. It's 30 cents a day, so it's not a lot to ask, but on there I can basically speak my mind. I leave the comment section open to invite discourse and conversation. I think that's what we need now more than ever. I still do, or I still am on social media because unfortunately it is the double-edged sword there. We kind of need it in 2023. It's how you market, but I try to limit my time on there and effort as much as I can. But that is at RuneNation for Instagram and RuneNation for Facebook, RuneNation for Twitter. Another platform that I think a lot of uh, gun people in the industry, or just people that are sick of the totalitarian platform that is modern social media, I think should also check out a platform called Vero, Vero. All my good friends from nonprofit are on there. They know the developer of it. He's a good individual, and it's very similar to Instagram in regards to how the app works. You know, it's very photography heavy. People still upload videos and whatnot, but there is no algorithm. There is no ads. There's none of that. I know that I have a few people in the industry that are on there, but it obviously hasn't taken storm as heavy as Instagram was, nor do I think any platform unfortunately will. But it is another good platform I think people should check out. Other than that, I appreciate your time today, man. Thanks for having me on, and hope to be back soon, man.
Yeah, one of these days, before too long, I got to make it up to your neck of the woods, and we'll go we'll have some fun.
Definitely, preferably the summer. It's pretty miserable here in the winter, but
Yeah, well,
anytime May moving forward, man, it's definitely a beautiful place to be.
I've been up there a couple of times, and now I've got, it is what it is. I got to get
Yeah,
up there. I can't make any more excuses. So, well, Ian, thank you very much for being on the show. Thanks for having a conversation about fitness, which can be very stifled, can be very boring, can be even very like derogatory. I appreciate the attitude that you bring to the market, and for all the spice and vinegar that we have in this place. Like, I thank you for being a part of it, of the gun culture, and having your input where you go. For those who are listening still at the end of this one, we've had Ian on before. We just did the one before this, which was on or was it? We would call it complacency versus what's the word?
contentment.
Contentment. I cannot remember the word contentment.
Yeah, it's okay.
So maybe that's a Freudian slip. But contentment versus complacency, especially in gun culture. This is our lighthearted conversation on fitness. But there's more. If you want to support the show here, we are taking, you can head over to redactedculture.locals.com. That's going to be our paywall back page. It's called the Black Site for a reason. You're also getting first dibs on you're getting deals on our merch, and then first dibs on like events that we put on. And then from there, dude, just leaving a like, leaving a comment, all that stuff helps the algorithm. It keeps us rolling. It shows me it tells me when I'm on target for you guys. I prefer to know I'm on target because I'm bringing something productive to you. I much prefer that over than Instagram yelling at me because I said something that was true, or well, what is it? It's not Twitter anymore. It's now X. It's going to be a weird year. I'm on the X app, the exact. And one of these days we have to talk about the totalitarianism that is Elon Musk's new one app for all, but that's not today. So if you want to follow us, you can head over to, we're on Instagram at, let's see, Instagram would be at Redacted LLC. Website is redactedllc.com. And then if you want to do, I am on Twitter, but that's just at Foxrow_official, because I think it's just actually at Foxrow right now. I don't remember. I'm on Twitter because it's funny. And then, yeah, we'll just call it for there. You know, if you want to follow me, that's great. Other than that, YouTube, leave a comment. If you're on the podcasting platforms, leave a review. I appreciate it. You guys have been great to us. So we'll talk to you later. And in closing, go forth and conquer.